Welcome to Lesson 2.1, Integers, Opposites, and Absolute Value. Today we're going to talk about identifying integers, determining if a number should be positive or negative, identifying the opposite of a number, identifying the absolute value of a number, identifying the additive inverse of a number, and comparing integers. So in order to talk about these things, we need to know what integers are. So we have to talk about all different kinds of numbers. So here we have counting numbers. Counting numbers are the numbers that we use to count, not including 0. So our whole numbers, but not 0. So with counting numbers, we don't count using fractions and decimals. So they're just our 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So on a number line, it's all the numbers starting with 1 and then to the right of that. Okay, but it does not include fractions or decimals. Whole numbers are all your positive numbers without decimals or fractions, and this time it includes 0. So whole numbers, again, do not have fractions or decimals. They're all the positive numbers, and it includes 0. Natural numbers can be either of these categories. It just depends on the problem. So again, you can have a number line that starts at 0 or 1 to demonstrate all of your natural numbers. Then integers. Integers are whole numbers, but they also include negative numbers. They still don't have fractions or decimals though. So in this case, you can see that they go from the right and the left of 0. Opposites are numbers that are the same distance from 0 but in different directions. So on a number line, the positives are going to go up or to the right, and the negatives are going to go down or to the left. So they're numbers that are the same distance from 0, but in different directions on the number line. So in this case, we're looking at 4 and negative 4. So 4 is 4 spaces to the right, and negative 4 is 4 spaces to the left. So they are opposites. The additive inverse is what you add to a number to get 0. So when you add the two numbers together, so like a negative 5 plus a positive 5, it gives you 0. Or a positive 14 and a negative 14, it gives you 0. So basically the additive inverse of a number is its opposite. Absolute value is how far a number is from 0. So negative 3 in this case, even though it's a negative, its absolute value is 3 because it's 3 spaces away from 0. And 4, it's a positive, so the absolute value, since it's 4 spaces away, is 4. It's not the opposite, so the sign doesn't have to be different. It's just telling us how far away am I from 0. All right, so moving right along, we're looking at different situations where we use integers. And we use integers when we talk about weather, so temperature, the temperature going up and down. Okay, so if the temperature drops, yes, we consider that a negative occurrence, but negative temperatures are when they drop below 0. In football, when you talk about a loss or a gain of yards, a gain of yards is going to be positive and a loss will be negative. In golf, we talk about over and under par. So when you talk about the number of strokes that you take, so let's say that par was 3. That means it should take you 3 shots to get the ball into the cup. And if it takes you 4, you're over par by 1. So that's a positive 1. And in golf, you want negative numbers. So if you get it there in 2, then you're at a negative 1, which is under par. Okay, and spending and earning money, we talk about positive and negative in terms of that. So if you're spending money, it's obviously a negative because it's going out of your bank account. And if you're earning money, it's a positive because it's going into your bank account. elevation, so above and below sea level. So elevation is a big one for us with positive and negative. So if you think about Denver, they call it the Mile High City because of the fact that it is literally a mile up into the air. It's a mile above sea level. And then you have other areas that are actually below sea level. So like when we talk about Louisiana, when you talk about Hurricane Katrina, a lot of it flooded because it is below sea level. So it was easy for the waters to get into the cities. All right, so we've talked about different situations. Now let's actually try to apply it. So if we look at when we use integers in real life, we can talk about temperature. So the highest recorded temperature in the US was 134 degrees Fahrenheit. So if I looked at a thermometer, it would be going up. It would be above this 0. So because of the fact that it is above 0, it's going to be a positive number. So we write that as 134 degrees Fahrenheit. The lowest recorded temperature was in Alaska, and it was 80 below 0. So now that we're getting to below 0, we're getting to go down, or if this were sideways, to the left of 0, and we know that those are negative numbers. So in this case, since it's below 0, we'd have to have 80 and then a negative to tell us that it was below 0, that it was actually negative temperatures. All right, so money. We're going to go ahead and give this a shot. If you want to pause and try it on your own and check your answers, you can, or just continue to work with me. So if you earn $20 for mowing your neighbor's lawn, you're earning it, and that's a positive. You're putting that money into your bank account or into your pocket. So that would be a positive $20. So we don't put any sign with it. It's just a $20. You owe your parents $13 for breaking the lamp in the basement playing baseball in the house. So since you owe them, that's a negative. It's coming out of your pocket. So that would be a negative $13. You won $2, so that's going into your bank account, so that's a positive. And you spent $30. So it's words that help us know whether or not it's a positive or a negative. You have to look at the word and what's happening to the money. So anything that would be going out of your pocket would be a negative. So spending, owing, debt, all of those are going to be negatives, or debit. So when you debit something, you're taking it out of your account. When you earn, win, or get credited money, that's a positive. That's going into your account. So it's not only when you see the symbol that tells us that numbers are negative or positive, it's also when you're looking at word problems and looking for words like spent, earn, above, below. That's going to help you know your positives and negatives as well. All right, so let's go ahead and give this one a shot again. So we have Mount McKinley in Alaska, which is the highest point in the U.S. It's actually 20,320 feet above sea level. Since it's above sea level, I know that it has to be a positive number. But remember, we don't write that positive symbol. We just write it as 20,320 feet. Okay, and that implies, since it's positive, that implies that it is, in fact, above sea level. Death Valley, California is actually the lowest point in the U.S. It's 282 feet below sea level. So if I were to look at this and not know, if I were just to look at a map with elevations on it, so if it just had numbers, so like we said, Denver is 5,280 feet above sea level. Mount McKinley is 20,320 feet. Because these are positive, that would imply above sea level. So to imply below sea level, without actually saying below, we do put the negative symbol. So I would put the negative 282 feet, and that would tell me that it is actually below sea level. And again, you don't want to forget your labels so that way we know if it's feet, miles, centimeters, inches, what are we working with. All right, so here we have absolute value. When you're working with absolute value, there's a particular symbol that you're looking for. It has two straight lines with a number in between it. So if you look here, you see that you have two straight lines with a number in between. This means you're looking for the absolute value of a number. So a problem isn't going to come out and say, find the absolute value. Sometimes you might just have a number inside those brackets or inside those lines, and you need to know that that means absolute value. We learned before that absolute value means how far a number is from zero. And again, it doesn't matter positive or negative. It's just if I had to take steps to get to that number, how many steps would it be? We don't care about the direction. We just want to know how many steps. So positive and negative tell us the direction. We just want to know how many steps. So in this case, if I had the absolute value of -6. So I'm going to look at my number line. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's -6. And I know that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces from 0. So the absolute value of -6 is 6. And then now I want the absolute value of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it makes sense that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away from 0 as well. So you're going to notice that your opposite numbers will have the same absolute value because they're opposites because they're the same distance from 0 but in different directions. So when we're talking about the absolute value, we're taking the direction part out of it and just looking at how many spaces we are from 0. All right, so let's give these a shot. Again, if you want to try without going through it with me, you can. Otherwise, go through it with me and we can take some time to practice. So -9. We know that -9 is going to be 9 steps from 0. The number basically tells us that. Okay? I don't want to say that you're taking the number and making it positive, but that's kind of just what you're doing. But -9 is 9 steps from 0, so its absolute value is 9. -67, it would take 67 steps to get there, so the absolute value of -67 is 67. Now notice, here's a positive 51. It's still a positive answer because we're only talking about how many steps it takes to get to 51 from 0. We're not talking about direction, and negative and positive imply direction. -100 would have an absolute value of 100. The absolute value of 8 would be 8. And the absolute value of -51, again, would be the same as 51, and it would just be 51. All right, so now we're going to talk about opposites. Opposites are where this changes a little bit. Opposites talk about same distance, different directions. So same distance, so they would have the same absolute value, but now we're talking about direction as well. Okay, so -9 we know is 9 spaces from 0 to the left. So 9 spaces and left. So the opposite would have to be 9 spaces to the right. So if you look at a number line, we know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is 9 spaces. And it's to the right, so the opposite of -9 is +9. That's really pretty much all that you're doing. So here you have 10. 10 is 10 spaces to the right, so you need to go 10 spaces to the left, and you know that left makes it negative, so you know that it's going to be a negative 10. The opposite of 45 would be a negative 45. The opposite of negative 89 would be a positive 89. The opposite of a negative 121, so negative 121 steps to the left, would be 121 steps to the right, which is in the positive zone. 67 steps to the right, the opposite would be 67 steps to the left, which would be negative. Okay, so now you are going to give this a shot. I am going to go over two quick things here before you get too far into it though. So when we talk about ordering numbers from least to greatest, you have to know that when a number is negative, it's actually smaller. So I'm going to go back to this page and we're going to look at these numbers and we're going to order them from least to greatest. So if you owe somebody $121, even though 121 seems like it's bigger than 67, because you owe it, it's actually smaller. Okay, so then your next smallest number would be negative 89. So notice when I'm on the left side, it's kind of like I go from numbers that are further away from 0 to closer to 0, and then when I get on the positive side, I start closer to 0 and work my way further away. So it's opposites. Negatives are all, like everything is, it's just like being in opposite land. So here we have negative 9 would be my next smallest. And then now I'm into my positives, so here's my positives. And these make sense to us. We know that it would go 10, 45, 67. Okay, so this part right here is always going to be the hardest because you're working, you have to get your mind trained to work backwards. You have to remember that the bigger the negative number or the further away it is from 0, the smaller it actually is. And if you're confused, think about it in terms of money. If you owe somebody $121, you have less money than somebody who only has $10 in their pocket because that's their $10 and that $121 is not yours. You have to pay somebody back. Right? And then with the additive inverse, we said the additive inverse is a number that when you add it gets you to 0. Well, think about opposites. If you go 9 steps left and then 9 steps right, you should get back to 0, shouldn't you? So if I went 9 steps to the right, I got to 9, and then if I went 9 steps to the left, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm back at 0. So the numbers that are additive inverses are basically the same thing as saying your opposites. So 9 plus a negative 9 is going to give you 0. So we would say that 9 is the additive inverse because you're adding it. And inverse is kind of like another word for opposite. So it's the opposite that you can add to the number to get to 0. So 9 is the additive inverse of negative 9. And we put negative 9 in parentheses to know that that means negative and not minus. Okay, we'll get lots more practice with these, but I did want to introduce you to what those are. So again, you have a couple of problems here to try on your own. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to email me or write them down so we can go over them in class.